Hello beautiful singers, this is Valerie White Williams and Vocal Splendor Studios, and today I would like to talk to you about how to build your high voice. So the high voice is, I feel, one of the aspects of the voice that can get the least practice in our daily lives. Most of us talk in our middle to lower middle voice, and we don't talk up like this. So unless you have children and you're playing tickle games or you like to ride roller coasters, there's very little opportunity to practice your high voice. And the high voice does require daily practice to keep it in check. So the way to work on your high voice is you need to commit to practicing somewhat regularly. Now, my number one way to work on high voice, to practice regularly, is by using the vocal sirens. I have a whole video on vocal sirens, which I will link to and add a card to, but just to remind you, vocal sirens are exactly what we think of when we hear a siren. You're gonna go, whoa! Woo! So those sounds actually do strengthen your high voice quite easily. Again, when you're going into your high voice, just to remind you about the vocal cords, is we have two muscle groups that make the vocal cords function. One brings them together, the other one stretches them out. And the stretching out and lengthening the vocal cords is what gives us those high notes. We're going to stretch out those cords. So what we want to do is practice doing that. So by doing woo, we are actually getting the stretch in the cords. Very simplistic. You can almost do that every day. And if you do want to work on your high voice, I highly recommend you do that. You practice those stretching exercises. And another great tip that I heard is talking to your animals. Kitty, puppy dog. If you have animals like that, is another way to kind of get some practice in the high voice. Now, besides those kind of silly sounds, you can also practice doing vocal exercises. Now, as far as gaining range, which is what we all want to do, there's certain steps to build up to building up your range. When it comes to high notes, the very first thing that people can usually do is go up in a vocal exercise or vocal line and go up and touch the high note and come back down. So that's usually the first layer of accessing that high note. You can touch it and then come back down, and then you can kind of touch it again. So something like a pattern like ah, 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 or ah, just barely sliding up there. The next thing you can do is slide up there and hold it for longer. So that's the next level, is that you're able to sustain it for a greater length of time. So there you're able to hold the note out. The next thing is to hit the note straight on. That is a much more difficult task. Many people can hit the note if they're going up to it, but to hit it straight on takes a lot more control and consistency. So that takes a little bit more practice to get to that. And then the last thing is if you can hit that high note and then crescendo and decrescendo. That is the ultimate skill. Usually when people do high notes, it's easier to do them loud because it does take extra breath energy to sing high notes. The vocal cords having that stretched out position requires a little more breath energy. So that's another aspect about building your high voice. It is related definitely to working on your breathing. Using your breath is also a huge aspect of building your high voice. They go together. Oftentimes people think they don't have any high notes, but they haven't really learned to master the breath. So when you master how to use your breath effectively, usually high notes become easier for you, and that's almost a rule that I see in my studio all the time. So by working on your breathing and getting really solid on how that works and how you can give yourself more breath energy, you're definitely going to find that the high notes become easier and easier. Okay, so also, the thing about high notes that a lot of people struggle with is this concept that they have to push and make a big loud sound, and they put a lot of effort and strength and thickness into the tone, and then they find they can't go very high. So I also like to think of high notes as like a pyramid. The higher you go, they get more and more narrow, and they keep narrowing as you continue to go higher. Now that feels really weird to a lot of singers because once you go up to that more head voice, things feel really squeaky, they feel narrow, they feel like they're not very loud. But in truth, the high notes, when they're resonating correctly, are much louder and they fill the room much more than you sense in your head. So this is something a lot of people have to work through. This is especially true for my guy students because men have such a powerful chest voice that you really need to kind of control the chest and make it narrow to access that pure head. And then again, the sound feels kind of wimpy in their ear and they think that can't be right, that sounds really bad, where truthfully in the room, it's very loud. But even women have that thing. We tend to want to push. We're all addicted to like, yeah, I'm going to muscle through it and do it. But that doesn't always work with the high notes. The high notes need to feel narrow. They need to resonate above the head, and we have to use all this breath energy to help them resonate. It's not about pushing and volume as much as it is resonance. And when you get the sense of the high notes getting narrower and narrower, like you're spinning little stars above your head, that is the key and the secret to access even higher notes. So the people that have all these really freaky high ranges have really worked on developing that ease as it goes higher and higher and higher. It gets narrower and narrower and narrower in the sense of what we feel in our head and what we're feeling up here. It takes massive energy though. So those are some tips and tricks on how to build the high voice. Go gently. Also, if you find yourself fatiguing when you're working on your high voice, I would back off and check and find out what you're doing to cause the fatigue. For my own self, when I'm working on a new song and I have to sing a bunch of high notes and I'm working hard to learn the parts, sometimes I am heavy-handed too. I step into my own bad habits and then I go, whoa, Valerie, back off. Start feeling the notes easily resonating versus feeling like I have to pound. The pounding in the high voice will fatigue you for sure. So the key is to try to find the energy, but feel that balance of resonance and ease. It takes time, but it's something that you can do and give yourself practice to keep going and doing it. Some of the exercises I like to use for building the high notes, beside actually sirens, is doing arpeggios. Arpeggios are ah, or ah, 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 or na 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 na. However you want to practice them, those are a classic way of working up to the high voice. You can also do slides like wee, things like that also help you find the resonance between the two notes. Sometimes the slides are an easy way for you to kind of squeeze into that narrowing feeling that we want to find, the pyramid. So anything that you can build that, going gentle really helps. Gentle meaning not pushing through the chords, but we're definitely going to be using the energy. And again, when we're working for anything breath and that coordination, as my teacher Valerie would say, imaginary line. Everything above the line is going to be relaxed. The energy is beneath. So the energy beneath is fueling those high notes and helping you do that. There you go. Tell me what exercises work for you. Have you found your high notes have gotten easier from taking lessons? Be sure to share it in the comments. I would love to hear about it. And if you like this content and want more vocal teaching, please subscribe, click the bell so you get notified. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day and sing on.